Warning: this video contains clips and excerpts of a humorous nature not normally found in math class. These are intended to fight the adolescent condition known as short attention span, found heavily in the modern teen, especially when in school. The only thing you should attempt at home is the math. The rest, you just laugh at. Hi, welcome back to AT Math. Today, 4-4, graphing functions. Why? More fun than getting blindsided by a moose.
What's the coffee? Whoa! Holy cow!
Now, today you can follow on page 252 if you like. So to answer the following, how do you graph this? And what we have here is negative x plus 2y equals 6. And the domain they give us is negative 4, negative 2, 0, and 2. Now, admittedly, this looks confusing. So again, feel free to rewind this, watch it twice. Please take notes, turn it into me, and get 10 points extra credit, for you'll probably need this. Now, what you do in this first equation is put it in y equals mxb. It's the great format to start with. That's what you want to do. So to get y equals mx plus b, first I want to get y by itself. But to get y by itself, first x has to go away. So instead of minus x, we're going to add x. Add x to one side, add x to the other. Remember, of course, you can't add 6 and x. They go side by side. Therefore, it's 2y, and you have 1x plus 6. From there, we have 2 times y, or y times 2. So the opposite of getting rid of times 2 is divide by 2. But if I divide one side by 2, I have to divide both of the other sides by 2. In other words, I mean one side, but both things on that side. So I have to divide this by 2 and this by 2. So this becomes 1/2 x, and 6 divided by 2 becomes 3. So now I finally have my y equals mx plus b, which is y equals 1/2 x plus 3. And now the real work begins. See, I have this here. I can go ahead and drop in a negative 4, drop in a negative 2, drop in a 0, and drop in a 2. So when I plug in negative 4 times 1/2, I get negative 2. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. When I plug in a negative 2 times 1/2, I get negative 1 plus dogs. Negative 2 times 1/2 is negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Plug in a 0. Shut up! Plug in a 0 times 1/2, and you get 0 plus 3 is 3. And finally, you get 2 times 1/2, which is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. Now you might say, wait a minute, do you really have to do all that? Because couldn't you have just plugged in the negative 4 here to make positive 4 plus 2y equals 6? And here's what I mean. If I have taken the original problem and stuck in the negative 4, okay, I could have said negative 4, could be minus, and then negative 4 would make positive 4 plus 2y equals 6. And then minus 4 gives me 2y equals 2. Divide that, y equals 1. If you notice, it's still y equals 1 down here. So why bother doing this? Simply put, you're going to need it to graph anyway. So I might as well teach you the right way the first time rather than teach you a couple different ways. So for your sake, go ahead and put it in y equals mx plus b. It takes a little longer at first, but it pays. Now, then we put each x and y together, which I did. Notice how I plugged it in and got the y, plugged it in and got the y, plugged it in and got the y. And what you're going to find is these are actually going to form a straight line, something like this. You're going to find something to this tune here. It's going to be like this and like this. And about plus 3 is going to be about like that. So that's how it's about going to look on your graph. I'll show you why later. So finally we're going to graph here, and that's what I explained. Well, remember that this is x and this is y. So x is negative 4, so 4 to the left. Y is value 1. Remember that the x value, this is positive, this is negative, y is positive, y is negative. So I go 4 to the left, 1 up for this one. 2 to the left, 2 up for this one. 0 left or right, but 3 up. 2 to the right, 4 up. Notice how they all form a line. And they will form a line because it's an equation. Go ahead and do a u-try. 3x minus y equals 1. And you have your domain. Again, I would suggest you put y equals mx plus b to solve for the domains. Go ahead and try it this time. By the way, if you're having a little trouble, minus 3x from both sides first, like this. And then just switch the sign. But if you switch this sign, you got to switch both of these signs. So now it becomes 3x, but this becomes -1. So I basically switched all the signs. Once you do that, just plug these in. So go ahead and try if you haven't already. Notice how I went ahead and made this switch to y equals 3x minus 1. Notice how I had minus 3x to both sides, and then I went ahead and switched all the signs because you switched the y from negative to positive. And now you go ahead and plug in the -3, -1, 0, and 4. Plug them in right here. And so then -3 becomes -10, -1 becomes -4, 0, -1, 4, 11. And you plug those in. So you have with the ordered pair. And if I were to graph it, it would look something like this. It would be at the -1 up 3/1, so it would be kind of like that. Let's take a short commercial break. And we're back. Oh, this was the plugged in form right here. So you see it's plugged in. Same idea. And now, when f of x equals absolute value x, there's two things to remember. Don't forget that f of x just means the function of x or y. So all this really just means y. Okay. And second, absolute value of x means that it is an absolute value, so expect a V shape. Why V shape? Because this is going to be parallel to this guy. And remember, it's going to be some sort of straight line, so it's going to have a mirror effect. You'll see. So when I say f of x equals absolute value x, or y equals all this, just for simplicity's sake, when I plug in -2 here, well, -2 equals 2. And absolute value of -1 is 1. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Absolute value of 1 is 1, and 2 is 2. Now, the reason why we have f of x is you get to see what you plugged in to begin with. So that way you always remember, oh, I plugged in a 0, and that's my result. Oh, I plugged in my 1, and that's my result. This is my x, this is my y. This is my x, this is my y. And so you have these right here. And if I were to graph, it would look something like this. That's how your absolute value would look. Well, you get the idea. Alright, moving on. So if you notice here, that is the graph in question right there. Now you try f of x equals 2 absolute value x. Now what do you want to do again? Well, you can make that a y first. You don't have to. But plug in each one and then try to graph. Go ahead and try it this time. Alright. Just a little hint if you didn't see, when you take the absolute value of -2, absolute value of -2 becomes positive 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Let's take a look at the answers, and you'll see it's still an absolute value, but notice how the graph got tighter. And the reason it got tighter is because you have a coefficient in front. In other words, when you're times it by a number, it's going to go higher faster. So your regular V gets thinner and taller. Time for a commercial. And we're back. Now, 2x plus 1 equals y. Again, you can do a couple different things. You can just plug in. Well, since they did not give us what x to use, it is up to you to decide which ones to use. Now, in general math, I tell people to use the 3 easiest numbers in the world, which are 0, 1, and 2. That's true, but because you're in AT math, I also want you to use -1 and -2. This counts for if you have an absolute value. This is important if you have x squared, which you'll get to later, and x cubed and whatnot. So from now on, when I say the easiest numbers in the world, think of -2 to +2. So let's plug them all in. Remember, you plug in the x value here, add 1, and get your y. So if I plug in -2, alright, 2 times -2 is -4, plus 1 is -3. So -2 got me -3. -1 times 2 is -2, plus 1 is -1. 0 times 2 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So that's how it fits. Graph will be on the next page probably. Sure enough. By the way, it does not matter which numbers you use. The line will look the same. I could have used 10 and would have got on the same line. Just would have been farther out. That's all. Now, negative 2x plus 3 equals y. So we're going to go ahead and plug in the five easiest numbers in the world again, which are negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. So I'll plug them in here. Make alone that real quick so I can see it. Yep. So negative 2 times this makes positive 4, plus 3 is 7. So in negative 2 you get 7. Negative 1, negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2, plus 3 is 5, right there. 0 times negative 2 is 0, plus 3 is 3, etc., etc. And if you notice, they're all in a straight line. Now the other way to graph. And this one you're going to find a little easier, I think. There are two parts. So let's just say y equals 2x plus 1. Now we already did this problem a couple pages ago. If you remember, I went ahead negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. But now we're going to do something different. If you wondered how I can graph them so fast, I'll show you. There's two steps. Step 1 is actually over here. This is the y-intercept. Step 2 is the slope. Those are the only two things I have to know in order to be able to graph. And 2, I can just change to 2 over 1. So I can get rise over run. Let's see. First I take the intercept. So I start at 0, 0. Because it's plus 1, you go up 1 from 0, 0. That's going to be where it cuts through the y line, thus the y-intercept. From there, from that point, I'm going to rise 2, run of 1. So from here, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And in fact, if I want to make it look like it's going to, it would be like right here. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Well, I guess I would actually move it over to about there. There you go. And so from there, if you notice, that was 0, 0. That's where the up and down is. Now the fraction, rise of 2, run of 1. So from this point, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So the next dot after that would be right here. Whoops. I don't really like that one. How about this? The next dot will be over here. And so it would go up 2 over 1 because that's what the slope says. And notice how my line is like that. Up 2 over 1. Let's quickly review. Why? Because y equals 2, which is 2 over 1. I start at 0, 0 and go up 1. So 0, 0, up 1, then up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And there you have it. Let's try another. Go ahead, we're going to start at negative 1, so I'm at 0, 0, I'm going to go down 1. Now you might say, why am I going up and down and not left and right? Remember, I'm comparing to y. So the y value, the up and down, starts at negative 1. So start at negative 1, and then 1 means 1 over 1. If you take a look here, 1 over 1, so you're at negative 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1. The line goes straight through. Now let's take a quick commercial break. And we're back. Now y equals negative 2x plus 3. Because I'm starting at plus 3, fine. I go ahead and go up 3. But now because it's negative, I'm not going up 2, but I go down 2 over 1. You're still going 1 to the right. But instead of going up 2, you go down 2. So take a look. See how I'm going down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. Why again? Because of negative slope. Positive slope goes up, negative slope goes down. You try. Y equals negative 4x plus 3. Let's see how you did. Let me go ahead and see if it's on the next page. It is not, so let me go ahead and insert a graph. So insert a graph table. No, not graph table. That is not what I wanted. Let me go ahead and insert a graph this time. Oh, Cartesian's fine. That's all good. So I start at plus 3, so I'll go ahead and put my dot right here at 1, 2, 3. And then down 4 over 1, so because this means negative 4 over 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so about here. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 here. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 over here. Notice how it all links together. And I hope you got something like that. Now the line changes. When you have an x squared, you're looking at a horseshoe shape. This is a positive x squared, so that's positive x squared. And a negative x squared is the same, except instead of going up, it goes down like this. Notice here, when you plug in negative 2, remember, negative 2, if you plugged it in, would be negative 2 squared, which makes positive 4. Negative 1 squared, which makes positive 1, and so on. Notice how it forms a horseshoe. It's a parabola. So x squares form a parabola. It's U-shaped. You want to write that down. So add another. Y equals x squared plus 3. So instead of at 0, 0, I'm going to go up 3 first. So 1, 2, 3. But then the parabola sits there. So the only difference between y equals x and y equals x squared, the only difference between y equals x squared and y equals x squared plus 3 is this guy gets a 3-step head start. If it was just y equals x squared, then it would start right here and do this. Like that. It would just be 3 below it. And now this. First I'm going up 2, well, all right. So I go up 2. But instead of going up, I'm just going down. Like that. Commercial time.
Pobres patos, tú.
And we're back. Now a shortcut. Unless it asks directly, I will allow you to find the intercept and place the parabola on it. In other words, I'm not going to make you draw 15 points. Because if you know the general shape, and you know where to put it on the intercept, you're going to be pretty close. Now, yes, it depends whether you're measuring, how much burger to put on a hamburger patty, which close ain't bad. Or if you're trying to, figure out the seals on a space shuttle, you probably want to be exactly right, because half an inch could cause an explosion that can destroy it. So obviously there's a time to be more careful, and there's a time to just estimate. Again, both shuttles were tragedies, but sadly both were unfortunate miscalculations by hardworking people who just made small errors. That happens. So, shortcut. Unless it asks directly, I will allow you to find the intercept and place the parabola on it. So start at plus 3. So go up 3. Then x squared, it's going to generally be like this. So it's going to look something like that. If you put that in your homework, I'll mark it right. Unless I need exact. If I need exact, I'll say, hey, I need you to give me an exact 5 dots, which I'll do. In this case, I say put the dot, put a parabola on top, good enough for me. One last type. F of x equals absolute value x plus 1. Now, you make a table. So again, the 5 easiest numbers, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. If I plug a negative 2 in, negative 2 plus 1 makes negative 1. See, if I plug negative 2 in here, negative 2 plus 1 is absolute value of negative 1. Absolute value of negative 1 becomes 1. So that goes here. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1, etc. Notice the shape it makes. It makes a V like that. You try. Go ahead. And hopefully you've had a chance to do it. It's going to look like this. Well, actually, I'll make a table. I'll just show you on the table here. So you plug in the negative 2. Let me get that figure down here. Clone it. So you plug in the negative 2. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Bam. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, etc. Notice one more thing, though. And I'm going to show you something here. Now, I didn't show most classes this, but if you're watching my webcast, I'm going to show you a shortcut here, too. And I think I'll only show the webcast people this. So if you didn't watch the webcast, well, you ain't going to know it. But here is a shortcut for this. When you have something like this, and it's an absolute value, notice how x plus 1 is in the middle? Notice how if you had a minus 1, okay, if you had a minus 1, that would make 0. So when x is negative 1, the result y equals 0. So in other words, if you see plus 1, start at minus 1 and make your cross. Make your V, from here. Take a look at this one. Whoops. See this here, how it starts at minus 1? do the opposite. Instead of minus 1, it's going to be at plus 1. Well, that's a pretty poor looking v, but you see the idea? It's just the opposite. So whatever's inside, just do the opposite of it. So if it's x minus 1, no sweat, it's actually x plus 1, or plus 1 of x. I mean, in other words, take x and go plus 1 over. So I hope that helps. Thanks again for watching. You might want to review this a couple times to make sure you get it down. Here's a short video. You take it easy.